Welcome back to Old School Sports and our Out of the Park Baseball 25 mini-series with the New York Yankees. We are about to begin the 2026 season. Feel like it's put up or shut up time for both us and the Yankees this year. Got to get this team back into the playoffs. One of our new additions from the offseason, Dalton Varsho, is day-to-day for a week with some shoulder issues, which have a modest impact on his throwing, so we decided to be cautious with him. Once he is back, that'll likely mean that the prospect slash youngster, although he's already 25, Christopher Familia, will be out of the starting lineup against right-handed pitchers. Taking a look at the preseason predictions, and expected to be an incredible battle between the Red Sox, Orioles, Rays, and our Yankees in the American League East. All four teams expected to win between 89 and 92 games and to be within 3 games of the top in this simulation. Unfortunately for us, we were 4th place in this simulation, which would leave us tied with the Rangers for the final wild card spot in the American League. So hopefully we can do a bit better than that. Juan Soto projected to have a monster year. I think he will if he remains healthy. And Blake Snell expected to have a nice year on the mound for our Yankees. Over in the National League, the Braves, the Reds, and the Dodgers are expected to win their divisions relatively easily. Particularly the Braves, projected to win 110 games and be 29 games better than the Mets in the simulation that was run. So we've got higher expectations than ownership does. Ownership only wants us to have a winning record, but as I said, time to get this team into the playoffs. We've got a decent amount of financial flexibility, a little under $8 million available. I mentioned I thought we had over 10 at the end of the last episode, but I had forgotten that although I had started paring the spring training roster down to 26, and I had done that, I had not yet put Tommy Edman, who we had signed to a minor league contract with major league options, onto the 40-man yet. So that's where the additional $3 million disappeared from. And hopefully we'll be able to get our Yankees off to a better start this season than last year. Last year we started 1-13, dug ourselves a big hole where we were below 500 at the midway point of the season. We did play very good baseball in June, July, and into August. And by August and into September, we were first in the division. But we faded down the stretch with some material injury issues, which hopefully won't be repeated this year, and ended up just missing the playoffs. Lost the division by 2 games to the Rays and missed out by 1 game behind the Astros for the final wild card spot. So hoping to do better this year. In an effort to keep people healthy, we're going to be benching Judge anytime his fatigue is below 93%. And similarly with our new catcher, Miguel Amaya, going to try to be relatively conservative with him. We like our backup, Ali Sanchez, and hopefully we can do everything possible to keep the players on our team who are a little more susceptible to injury healthy this year. And you may remember last September that we lost Juan Soto for the push for the playoffs when he walked into a tree while talking on his cell phone. And before this season even got underway, our starting catcher, Miguel Amaya, just injured his foot while changing a tire on his car, and the car slipped off the jack and crushed his foot. So definitely not the start to the season I was hoping, but looks like he's going to be out for about 8 weeks. Hopefully when we see him back sometime in June, he'll be fully healthy, but not a good sign of things to come if I were to believe in things like foreshadowing. And as we're ready to get the season underway tomorrow, I think it was probably prudent that we were cautious with Dalton Varsho. He was supposed to be a 1 to 2 week injury, but now his recovery from that shoulder strain is unknown. So he'll likely, unless he has a miraculous recovery overnight, be missing the first game of the season and some time thereafter. But we're trying to play the long game here. Hopefully he'll be back in the not-so-distant future. Brought up Carlos Narvaez from AAA to fill in for the injured Amaya, and Ali Sanchez will become our starter in the meantime. Like Sanchez and his strong defense and that captain personality he brings, and he was solid for us last year when we picked him up in the Rule 5 draft from the Pirates. And our Yankees off to a bit of a slow start here at 2-4, but as I mentioned, we started 1-13 a year ago, so that's still significant progress, sadly. Varsho ready to come off of the IL, which is good. Unfortunately, Juan Soto is now nicked up, a sore elbow, moderate impact on his throwing. We're going to try to just DH him for the next 2 weeks, keep him in the lineup. We'll find out whether or not that backfires on us, but if he's DHing every day, it shouldn't. We'll see. So our Yankees are off to a good start, 13-6 record now, first place in the AL East, but a very tight battle as expected, with the Orioles a game behind, the Rays a game and a half behind, and the Red Sox 2.5 behind us at this point. Arson Judge off to an excellent start, 9 homers and 19 ribbies through the first 18 games of the year. We've been trying to nurse Soto through that injury by keeping him in the DH spot, and unfortunately his recovery from that sore elbow is unknown, so it's definitely lingering. He is hitting .294 with a 154 WRC plus, so important that we try to keep him in the lineup. We won't be able to keep Everson Pereira in the lineup, though. He's out for a week with a dead arm. He's also having a good start to the year, .292, 6 homers, 13 ribbies, just homered in 4 straight games. Not quite Don Mattingly, Ken Griffey Jr., or Dale Long territory, but still an impressive feat for the 25-year-old outfielder. But we're going to put him on the DL, hopefully just a 10-day stint, and hopefully by the time Pereira will be back, Soto will have worked through those arm issues and can play again in the outfield. If not, it might be time at that point to think about a 10-day stint for Soto, or at least benching him for a few days to try to get him healthy. And we've made it to May 1st, and through the first month of the season, the AL East has been exactly as competitive as advertised. We're tied for first with the Orioles, but only a game and a half separates the top 4 teams in the division. Aaron Judge continues to lead the American League with 10 home runs. Anthony Volpe is third in the league in batter war here in these early stages of the season, and Carlos Rodon is in the top 3 in the league in earned run average, strikeouts, and pitcher war. So he is off to a good start, 3-1, 2.12 ERA with 43 strikeouts in less than 30 innings. So things are going pretty well for the Yankees. Still have some injury issues. Fortunately, Soto is back healthy, so he's now our everyday right fielder against right-handed pitching with Judge at the DH. We are playing Judge in right field against left-handed pitching right now. Once Pereira comes back, might have some decisions to make that get those guys potentially a little more time at DH. Anthony Volpe banged up, but only 1 day left at this point with a sore back. We've been sitting him for much of the past week to just kind of hopefully get him over that injury. And then still waiting on Amaya. He's still a month away or so. Check in on Narvaez. He's hitting 143 and 14 at-bats as the backup. Don't necessarily have huge expectations for him. Ali Sanchez, though, the batting average has dropped by more than 100 points this year to $176. So as much as we like his glove, kind of proving that we were probably right to view Amaya as the starter and Sanchez as the backup there. And we've simmed ahead another week or so, still tied for first, 17-11 record, although we're tied with the Red Sox now. 4 teams separated by 1 game in the insane American League East. So it looks like it's going to be a real interesting battle. Unfortunately, now as we sit here on May 6th. The team is completely healthy as far as the guys who should be healthy. Still waiting on Miguel Amaya, 3 weeks away from that fractured foot. Interesting point was brought up in the comments to a recent episode by Jack Hammer, Possessor, and Alan Good about the versatility of Dalton Varsho when we picked him up, a guy who can also play catcher for us. And he can play it at a competent level, although he's not got a great arm for a catcher. And interestingly, with Austin Wells, we also have another player who can play catcher. He's kind of the opposite of Varsho. He's got an average arm, but is a bit below average in terms of catcher blocking and catcher framing. So I think there certainly is an argument if we have another injury to Amaya or Ali Sanchez to maybe do something a little more creative with the likes of Wells and Varsho behind the plate. They would certainly give us a better bat than Narvaez has, who's hitting a .118. That being said, Narvaez is 27 years old. He's a competent defensive catcher, and we only got him one at-bat last September. So didn't necessarily think he was going to be a big-time offensive player, but at least wanted to get him a little bit more action and see what we had in him. But I do think that given the kind of unique versatility we have built into our team with two everyday players who can also play catcher, if we have another injury to Sanchez or Amaya going forward, maybe we look at a short-term solution with Wells or Varsho playing in those roles as a backup catcher. I tend to think it's probably more likely Wells, although we don't like his defense as much at catcher. Varsho, to me, is a little too valuable as our starting center fielder, so still kind of view him as more of an emergency guy behind the plate, whereas Wells, we can probably easily find someone among our deep infield pool who can play first base defensively better than Wells even can. And I think this is likely to be a common thing in the coming seasons, but just when we're feeling good about things, Judge finds himself banged up. Fortunately, it's just a bruised thigh, but it is going to have a minimal impact on his hitting and a moderate impact on his throwing. Given that he's fragile already, we are going to just shut him down for the week. We're not going to put him on the IL. We've got a deep enough roster that I think it'll get some other people some playing time, but don't want to fool around with anything as far as Judge and his health. And it was not a perfect week while Judge was out. Fortunately for us, we had a rain out, so only 3 or 5 games in his absence. We only went 2-3 in those 5 games. But fortunately, in Judge's absence, Soto was an absolute monster, hit .562 with 5 home runs and 6 ribbies during the week. As we sit here now on May 18th, 22-16 record, only 500 over our last 10 games, but we've still got a small amount of separation between us and the rest of the division. And Judge and Soto, who are both now healthy, are both tied for the American League lead with 13 dingers here in the early going of this 2026 season. And while our Yankees are playing some fantastic baseball and Judge is having a monster season, these little nagging injuries are adding up. A pulled ab, which is going to cost him another week here. Hitting .277 with 17 homers and 38 ribbies, OPS over 1 and a 176 WRC plus. So he's been incredibly productive at the plate. Do feel bad that we're trying to be cautious with him as far as not playing him when he's a little fatigued. We put him through that strength and conditioning training over the winter that supposedly worked and helped him a bit. And we also have him in a situation now when everyone is healthy where he's basically only in the right field a couple days a week when we're playing left-handed pitchers. Otherwise, he's our DH. So I feel like we're trying to be as responsible and conservative with him as possible, but he still just keeps getting banged up with these relatively minor injuries. I guess with what we dealt with last season when he only played in 57 games. If we can limit him to a few of these 5 to 10 day injuries over the course of the season, I guess it's probably a victory. And we've made it to the month of June, and May was a fantastic month for our New York Yankees. We got either the daily double or the exacta, depending on which horse racing analogy you want to use here. But the AL batter of the month was Juan Soto, 349 average, 10 homers, 21 ribbies, and 27 runs scored. And the American League pitcher of the month was Blake Snell, who was 5-0 with 39 strikeouts and 36 innings pitched. Kind of got off to a slow start. Looks like he didn't have a win in the month of April, but standing now 5-2 with a 3.92 ERA on the year. Taking a look at the standings here, and we've opened up a 3.5 game lead on the Rays, 6 up on the Orioles, 7.5 up on the Red Sox. Our 32-19 record is second best in the American League, half a game worse than the Mariners, the Braves as expected, the Dodgers as expected, and the Cubs, in a little bit more of surprise, are also off to very fast starts this season. Judge and Soto, despite the fact that they've both missed a little bit of time here and there, first and second in the American League with 17 and 16 homers respectively. They also rank first and third in OPS. Don't have any pitchers among the top 3 in the prime pitching categories, but we'll take a look here now that we've got 2 months in the season at our team statistics. Our 32-19 record is right in line with Pythagorean expectations. 625 winning percentage in April, up a bit to 629 in May. So we've been very good both months of the year. Best offense in the American League, ranking first in runs scored. And we've also got the best pitching staff in the American League, ranking first in runs allowed. So things are cranking along at a pretty good rate. We're only 9th in batting average and 11th in hits, but we're generating the most home runs in the American League, which helps. We're middle of the pack in terms of walks, and we're not striking out much at all, which is nice to see from our everyday players. Starters ERA of 4.08 is 4th, but our bullpen has the best ERA in the American League at 2.93. Decent running team, and we're pretty middle of the pack in terms of defense. Was hoping that might be a little better. Feel like we've got some pretty good defensive players. I guess we're certainly not optimizing things by having Judge play DH rather than right field, but as I've talked about many times in previous episodes and many times already in this episode, my goal is just to try to keep him healthy for the duration of this contract and ensure that he is healthy if and when we make it to the playoffs. And one final piece of good news as we prepare for the beginning of June, Amaya is back from that broken foot. We had him play 3 games in Scranton on a rehab assignment. So I think he's ready to come back now. Narvaez hit just a $114 over 35 at-bats. So at 27 years of age, it's conceivable we don't see him on the major league roster again. Can't say anything for sure, but as I talked about, if there's a relatively short injury between Amaya and Sanchez, we very well could look to Wells or Varsho to fill that gap. The only reason I would never say never as far as potentially seeing Mr. Narvaez again is that the guy who's our starting catcher in Scranton Wilkes-Barre, Jesus Rodriguez, who we tried to avoid including in any of the trades that we looked at this past offseason and were able to do so, is out for 3 to 4 months with a ruptured Achilles, so unlikely to see Rodriguez again this year. He hit .262 and 61 at-bats in his introduction to AAA ball. Certainly view him as someone who could be a fairly competent backup catcher down the line, but unlikely that he'll be able to help us this season, unfortunately. And we've got Amaya back in the starting lineup. Check in while we're thinking about Amaya and some of our other new additions. Amaya, with that injury, is making his major league debut, hopefully today against Detroit. Well, not his major league debut, but his Yankees major league debut. So we'll know more in the coming weeks of how he's performing. Tommy Edman, who we brought on as a utility infielder, hitting 202 in 94 at-bats. We've been starting him against left-handed pitchers. And with some of the banged up injuries we've had, he's seen a little more playing time than anticipated. Certainly, the fact that he is barely replacement level is not what we were hoping for from him, but he'll probably be playing a little less going forward. Hopefully, that'll help his performance get a bit better. Dalton Varsho, of course, our center fielder, missed the start of the season with that injury, but he's hitting only 234. But he does have 10 home runs and 23 ribbies, so a 110 WRC plus and a 1.2 WAR. We like his glove in center field, and we did feel like that left-handed bat with a little bit of power might play reasonably well at Yankee Stadium. Taking a look at his splits, actually, it's a little better. He's hitting 254 at home versus 216 on the road, but he interestingly has 5 home runs at each location. That said, his slugging percentage is more than 100 points better at Yankee Stadium, and he's got a 131 WRC plus at home versus a 92 on the road. So I think he does seem to be a player whose profile seems to fit Yankee Stadium reasonably well. I know some of you have wondered about an extension for him, and we're thinking about it too. Looking for 4 years at over $15 million a season right now is a guy who's going to be turning 30 shortly. Don't feel like we have to lock him up right now. We'll have money in the off season if we decide that's the way to go, but we don't feel like Varsho's someone we necessarily need to make a medium-term commitment to immediately. And pitching-wise, our 2 starting pitching additions in the offseason, Griffin Canning and Luis Giolito, have both been okay. Their 4.53 and 4.26 ERAs, respectively, are the 2 worst among our pitching staff as far as our starters, but they're also our 4th and 5th starters, so that's kind of what you might expect. Anthony Maldonado and Carlos Rodriguez, the 2 Rule 5 acquisitions for our bullpen, have both done respectably so far. Nobody, with the exception of Phil Matan, our setup guy, is having an extraordinary season out of the bullpen, but it's been very solid. As I mentioned when we touched in, the bullpen ERA is best in the American League, basically just by everyone pitching reasonably well, which is nice to see. And the baseball gods really don't want us to be able to see what a Miguel Amaya can do. We won the first game he played 6-4 against Detroit. He was 0 for 4 with 3 strikeouts. But now he's day-to-day with the flu for the next 3 days. So I'll probably give him some rest, pivot back to Ali Sanchez, and hope that we start being able to see what Amaya can do on the field at some point. And we've made it to mid-June. Things continue to go very well for the Yankees on the field. 40-24 record, 2.5 clear of the Rays, and 8 clear of the Orioles and the Red Sox now. All over the offensive leaderboards are the 2 big guns, Soto and Judge. Soto is 2nd in the National League, or in the American League, in batting average, 2nd in homers, 1st in OPS, and 1st in batter WAR. And Judge is leading the American League in homers, 2nd, tied for 2nd in ribbies, and 2nd behind his teammate in OPS. The only negative news is that I think we may have a relatively serious injury coming our way, and it's a guy that I really don't want to lose. Dalton Varsho has been pending for a foot injury for the last couple of days. Generally, my experience is that the longer it takes for these unknown injuries to be resolved, generally means they're more and more serious the longer it takes. Not a perfect correlation, but I think that trend is what I've at least experienced anecdotally. So I'm hoping we hear what the injury is as soon as possible, and hopefully it's not something that's going to have a real significant impact on him. He slowed down a bit recently, 12 homers and 26 ribbies in 180 at-bats, kind of a league average offensive player. But if we can get league average offense out of him with that potentially very good defense in center field, I think I'm still happy with that. And we finally got our diagnosis on Dalton Varsho. Could have been worse. He's got a sprained ankle. He's going to miss about a month. So not optimal, but also not the end of the world. We're sitting here at 41-25, up 2.5 games on the Rays as we lose Varsho. We'll see what we look like around the All-Star break, which is when I'd anticipate him potentially being ready to join us again. And we've made it to July 1st. Definitely mixed results. June was a rough month overall for the Yankees. Good news, Aaron Judge was the American League Batter of the Month. 340 average, 13 homers, 32 ribbies, hitting .303 with 30 homers and 70 ribbies here just about at the midway point of the season. So he is positioned to have a vintage Aaron Judge season if he can stay healthy and keep producing at this rate. That's the positive. One piece of negative is that Dalton Varsho is not doing well in his rehab from that injured ankle and going to be out for at least another 4 to 5 weeks. So hopefully we'll see him by August. We're hoping we might see him at the All-Star break. We got a solid mid-season review of our goals. Steinbrenner was only looking for us to be above 500, and we're 44-35, so that's positive. He thinks that Varsho was a nice upgrade in center field, thinks that we're doing well with attendance and building up the farm okay. Still upset that he doesn't see any players that we've drafted on the major league roster, but they're all in their teens or early 20s, so that should not really be a shock to him. The biggest negative, though, was that it was kind of rough on the field for us in the month of June, and we're 3-7 in our last 10, and we're now 3 games behind the Rays, still up 2.5 on the Red Sox and 3 on the Orioles in this tight American League race, and we are in the first wild card spot, 2.5 games up on the final wild card spot, which 3 teams are tied for the last 2 spots right now, the Rangers, the Red Sox, and the White Sox. So not in a bad position, but certainly not as strong as we thought we might be a month ago. Team statistics, we've dipped to 4th in the American League in runs scored, and we've dipped to 6th in runs allowed. So that kind of documents what a rough month it was for us, because 2 months into the season we were 1st in both categories. Now we're 4th and 6th. And that added up to a 12-16 month of June. So was not an optimal result on the field, but as we sit here 79 games into the season, it's probably a good time to take stock of what we have and don't have and start thinking about what we might like to do over the next month as we approach the trade deadline. We've got about $6 million potentially available to take on some contracts. We'll take a quick look here and just see if there's any incredible players on the trade block. Probably a little early for superstars to be out there. Some interesting pitchers, though, certainly headlined by Sandy Alcantara, Nestor Cortez, Dustin May, some definitely familiar names among the pitchers who are available, among the top batters available. No superstars available yet, that's for sure. Our old buddy Michael Conforto, who we traded away about this time a year ago, is back on the trade block. Our former center fielder Trent Grisham is as well. They actually both happen to be playing with the Diamondbacks right now. And I think you can probably say this about many teams in Major League Baseball, but if there was an opportunity for us to add a big-time starting pitcher, that would certainly be positive. A month after Blake Snell was the American League Pitcher of the Month with a 5-0 record in May. He sits with a 6-6 record and a 5 ERA for the season so far. Cole leads the team in wins with 7, and he's got the best ERA among any of our starters, and he's also pitched more innings than anybody. But that 4.09 ERA being the best of any of your starters is not optimal. Rodon has been a 500 pitcher with a 5.42 ERA. Canning has been fine, 5-4, 4.33. Giolito also kind of fine, 2-4 with a 4.50. Can't have too high expectations for fourth and fifth starters, but certainly particularly Snell and Rodon have underperformed what we would be expecting from the two lefties over the last month. David Bednar, 2.48 ERA and 19 saves. Phil Maton, 1.59 ERA over 22 and a third innings. Andrew Nardi at 2.20 ERA over 32 and 2/3 innings, struck out 39. He's been doing well. Bubic, not great. Neely, nice to see him settling in after that disappointing year he had a year ago when we promoted him from Double-A, and then we ended up sending him to Triple-A for the second half of the season. Nice to see him more than holding his own in the majors. Maldonado and Rodriguez, the Rule 5 guys, have been fine. Connor Cook, kind of disappointing for a second straight year. I like Cook's skill set when I look at him. I think he's got plus stuff, plus movement, 2 really good pitches, plus a changeup. Should be more than acceptable to be a useful right-handed reliever, but thus far he has not been particularly productive at the major league level. So if there was a monster starting pitcher, that would be a huge potential acquisition to go after. But quite honestly, if we can just find an arm or two to really upgrade our bullpen, I think that could go a long way towards helping us get this team into the playoffs. Turning to our everyday players, Amaya hasn't played much, but he has kind of stabilized the catching position offensively when he's been around. 258 average, 3 homers, 3 doubles, 6 ribbies, and 62 at-bats. Put up a 131 WRC plus, so he has been solid. WAR of almost 1 in just 19 games played this year. So he's doing what we hoped he would do at the catcher position for us. Just hasn't had the opportunity to play as much as we would have hoped. Ali Sanchez has been a little better since he's been the backup. He's got the batting average up over 200 now in 174 at-bats, but certainly would be hoping for more offense from him. We like his glove. He's fine as a backup, but maybe he got our expectations too high with the way that he hit a year ago. Austin Wells, the young first baseman, has been okay. 230 average, not great. Does have 11 homers and 43 ribbies in 252 at-bats, so the hits he has had have been productive, but it still all adds up to only an 82 WRC plus and below replacement level type of performance, given that he is not a great defensive first baseman. Want to give him a chance, but he may not be a long-term solution there for us. Tommy Edman hitting 219 in 146 at-bats. He's been above replacement level thanks to his defensive quality and versatility. Fine as a utility infielder. Anthony Volpe, 253 average, 10 homers, 13 doubles, 10 stolen bases. Kind of slightly below average in terms of his WRC plus this year, but he's still put up a 2.0 WAR thanks to his very good defense at second base and the pop that he has in his bat. Not a great season, but certainly not the problem. Nick Madrigal, utility infielder, hitting 237 and 76 at-bats. Captain personality, Madrigal, Edman, Sanchez, those guys all bring some positive things to the team. Not expecting them to be world beaters. I think they're all doing okay for what they are. If we ended up making a big trade for a big offensive player who played in the infield and we had to move on from a Edman or a Madrigal, it's not the end of the world. But if they continue to be our utility infielders, I don't think that's the end of the world either. Gleyber Torres at third base, having a rough year for him. 226 average, does have 11 doubles and 12 homers, but a 92 WRC plus is not exactly what we're hoping from him as our third baseman. And then Oswald Peraza, the shortstop, hitting 234, 8 homers, 31 ribbies, 81 WRC plus. He's a respectable defensive shortstop. Feel better about his 81 WRC plus playing shortstop than we do with the production that we've gotten from Gleyber at third base. Moving on to our outfielders, and obviously Varsho is still on the DL. Christopher Familia has been up all year, starting at times when Darsho's been hurt, so he has 158 at-bats, 234 average, 5 homers, 17 ribbies. He's been a slightly below average offensive player. Fine for a fifth outfielder when he's someone that we're playing more often. Probably not optimal. Everson Pereira, the batting average has plunged to 209 this year. Does have 13 homers and 35 ribbies, but the 85 WRC plus and the fact that he's barely replacement level this year after a 148 WRC plus and a 4.2 WAR a year ago is certainly disappointing. Feel like that year a year ago was probably the best version of him we could possibly see, but given that it was during his major league debut, I'm a little surprised by how far he's fallen back this season. Certainly having Varsho around more often would help. Oscar Gonzalez has been back and forth between AAA Scranton Wilkes-Barre when we've had injuries. 288, 5 homers, 18 ribbies, and 111 at-bats. He has been fine for a utility outfielder. And then the big guns in the offense are doing what we would want them to do this year. Aaron Judge, as we talked about, 300 average, 30 homers, 70 ribbies, a ridiculous 193 WRC plus, and a 3.7 WAR midway through the season, even though he's really very rarely playing in the field. And then Juan Soto, a 317 average, 22 homers, 57 ribbies, an OPS of close to 1100, and a 192 WRC plus with a 3.8 WAR. So Soto and Judge are doing their best Ruth and Gehrig or Mantle and Maris type of performance here with the offensive numbers that they're putting up this year. Both of them have OPS pluses and WRC pluses of over 190. So big years from both of them. They're first and third in homers right now. Judge leading the league in ribbies, and they're first and third in OPS as well. Not surprisingly, none of our pitchers rank among the league leaders at this point. And with that, we'll call it an episode. If there's a big bat available, we'd certainly love to add him. If there's a top starting pitcher available, we'd certainly love to add him. Honestly, I think an arm or two for the bullpen is probably something that's more realistic and more attainable and could still make a positive difference for us. But as we sit here just about at the midway point of the 2026 season, we're where we want to be, which would be in the playoffs when if the season were to end right now. Certainly the fact that we had opened up a decent lead in the division and we've given it all away over the month of June is not exactly the way we would write things up, but hopefully we'll get things stabilized here in the month of June and by the time, or the month of July, and by the time we get to the end of this month, hopefully we'll have another player or two to help us guide this Yankees team back into the postseason. Until our next episode, thanks so much for watching, and hope you have a great day.